series. This is the next in a series of meetings organised by TPXimpact, which is running a project on behalf of the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, MHCLG, to encourage the adoption of the Open Referral UK standard for sharing open data on human services. We've referred to this as the technical meeting because it's geared primarily at software developers, suppliers of systems that adopt the standard, and people who buy from those suppliers. But there will be some more general information on what we're doing. This is the agenda. We'll start by hearing from Sheldon Ferguson of MHCLG on what the project is doing before we get on to the Human Data Services Specification and the International Open Referral Group, which Greg Bloom from Open Referral in the USA will talk about. Then Catherine Irish from Open Data Services Cooperative that look after the technical side of the standard, including the UK profile, will speak. And then we'll get first sight at some of the website being revamped by Dave Isles and Guy Hilton on this project, in particular, the validator against the latest version of the standard. If there is time as we go through, we'll stop briefly for questions after each session, but there is time at the end. You can also put questions in the chat and we'll send you a feedback form. We'll try and answer questions as we go along, but if we don't answer any during the meeting, we'll answer them afterwards. So we'll start by introducing Sheldon Ferguson. Welcome, Sheldon, who's going to talk about the local digital project to encourage adoption of Open Referral.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Mike, and welcome everybody. So I am the non-technical part of this presentation. My name is Sheldon Ferguson, as you've heard. I'm the policy lead in the local digital team within MHCLG, and we have two responsibilities basically. Our first one is cybersecurity of councils, just make sure that they're resilient to cyber attacks, and we've done quite a bit of work in remediation. But wanting to make that sustainable, we need modern services, and that's where I come in on the transformation of digital services within councils. And we've made a number of interventions to achieve that. We've done the digital declaration, which is an ambition about how councils should work together and breaking down cultural barriers around work, adopting agile methodologies, working in the open and providing digital leadership. We've also done a bottom-down effort, which is known as the Local Digital Fund, where we've had councils collaborate together on common problems and delivering digital solutions to it. And the idea of that is to get a solution that can be scaled across the country, but it's not tailored to one council. That was the hypothesis. We've had a number of successes there. Digital planning has come out of it. Also, Local Gov Drupal as well. That was another one of our successes, which is now I think it's got over a third of councils in the country. But also we've had a number of blockers as well. We did a piece of work with Redbridge Council on housing repairs. Brilliant piece of work, but it just never took off and scaled, and we wanted to understand what that was. And we found there were some systemic issues around data standards. If we can move on a couple of slides, please. Slides, please, Mike.
Yeah, tell me when to stop. There you go.
That's fantastic. So yeah, we got to doing a piece of work around the data standards. This is a piece of research we completed last year on the blockers to scale and transform services. We found councils have huge amounts of data to manage, whether it's social housing, social care, revenues and benefits. But we also found none of this data is linked. It's all siloed. This is creating challenges. Partly this is cultural because services want to be in their own little unique ecosystem. And this has revealed some systemic challenges around the lack of standardization. And this is also compounded by legacy technology. Getting data to be standardized is key to leveraging new efficient services that deliver better outcomes for citizens. Next slide, please. So we've completed a number of reports in this sector, and what we found is that poor data standards create a series of challenges. We have fragmented data systems across different local government departments that are not joined up. This can lead to frustration for council officers, but also poor outcomes or bad experiences for citizens. It can also lead to duplication of efforts in reconciling incompatible data formats. This leads to missed opportunities. Even worse, manual workarounds that lead to increasing chances of human error. This can create difficulty in managing people with complex needs across systems like housing and social care. An example of this, more recently in the last couple of years, is the tragic loss of our Ishak due to mold exposure. This information was reported a number of times around the housing providers' services, but it was not aggregated to a point where it should be create an intervention. So these reports or these reportings of this incident were not aggregated, and it fell through the gaps, creating a tragic loss of life. Next slide, please. As you're aware, data standards are agreed upon conventions or formats that define how data should be structured, recorded, and exchanged. These standards ensure that data from different systems, organizations, or departments can be understood, compared, and used consistently. They enhance data quality, they improve data accuracy, they support interoperability. The benefits to local governments are efficiency. Standards reduce the need for manual data reconciliation across departments and services. They support collaboration. Multiple agencies such as health, housing, and social services can work together more effectively with standardized data, being able to link those data sets. This leads to better outcomes when the data is accurate, interoperable. It leads to quicker and better decision making, improving better outcomes for citizens. A good example of this we've seen is Savvy, which is starting to link vulnerable data standards across departments and councils, which is enabling earlier and better targeted interventions for individuals in need. Also, good data standards can foster innovation, and it's some of the shiny stuff such as AI. Next slide, please. So a little bit of history as to where we are. Next slide, please. So we've got open referral as well. I've just mentioned a bit of Savvy, which we've been supporting and funding as well. And also we're doing a piece of work on social housing data standards as well, and how to improve standards within social housing. But open referral, this is probably the project we've been supporting the longest. It had the first round of the local digital fund, which I mentioned in 2018. Then it was really called Open Community, about looking at community services. We've supported 4 phases of funding. It's been awarded 500k. There's been quite a bit of commitment to this over the years since 2018, and it was endorsed by the Cabinet Office's Data Standards Authority in 2020. No, that's wrong. I think that was last year. But basically, the endorsement was to make sure that Open Referral UK would be used across Whitehall. And earlier this year, HMT, Majesty's Treasury, announced in the budget a further 600k for the support and implementation of Open Referral UK. Next slide, please. And yeah, looking to the future, we can go to the next slide as well. We're now looking at priorities for a sustainable future for Open Referral UK. We're now looking about what could be the long-term ownership of the standards, what kind of model that would look like. We're also seriously looking at how to roll out OI UK as a standard within councils. And underpinning that is what kind of support we can give to the implementation of open referral. We are giving this some serious thought, and there will be some support, but we just haven't figured out where it is yet. But there should be announcements or something coming to us fairly soon. But in the meantime, we have the further things which we have got, which we're going to present fairly soon. If we go to the next slide here, we've got some work in progress supporting documents to encourage adoption. We've got an executive summary document for the senior leaders and decision makers, which succinctly summarises the impacts and benefits of Open Referral UK. For council officers who are trying to make the case to implement Open Referral, we have business cases, which they can support making their cases to decision makers and council members. And for project managers, we've got a project initiation document template to plan how to implement OI UK. And finally, there's a technical overview document, which provides infrastructure on how to implement OI UK. These documents are coming soon, but please let us know if you'd like to contribute to their development. We'd love to hear from you. And that's it from me. Next slide. If this is the time where we can stop and say, is there any questions? And there's a link down there if you want to know more about our work on data standards. Please follow it up.
We've got a few minutes if we have any questions for Sheldon at the moment. Do raise your hand or just butt in. And wonderful silence. Chris. Chris Mackey and then G.
Good afternoon, Chris.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm from the Health and Social Care Alliance Scotland. I manage the ALICE programme up here, and we've been historically involved in Open Referral UK, and I guess I think I would like to be involved in the working up of these documents. If you do see a need for to sort of square off the Scottish dimension, if I can't help directly, I'll probably be able to find somebody that can. Unless there's anybody better placed on the call, because obviously I don't know who else is here. This is my first meeting.
Chris, love to hear from you. We'll get in touch with you. It's great for your offer of help. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. We will share a feedback form at the end, and one of the things we'll ask people if they want to contribute to is review of the documentation. The technical documentation will largely just put the standard in the context of local government and refer to documentation from the international project, and which Catherine will present later. But a lot of the other guidance, we'd welcome other people's input too. So, do feedback, and we've got your details anyway. Chi, if I've pronounced your name correctly, Chi Uzumba.
Yeah, spot on. You got it right, Chris. Yeah, thanks so much, Sheldon. I just wanted to understand what the timeline is around the work in progress support documents.
We're in development now. I think they're probably coming out fairly soon. I imagine probably in the new year.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you. And Will Callahan from Local Gov Drupal.
Good to see you, Will.
Hi, Sheldon, wearing a different hat. So in terms of the documents, I think that definitely the Local Gov Drupal team would be certainly interested in reviewing and maybe contributing to those, because we did a lot of thinking on this standard back in the day about how you would implement it and how it might be used. So definitely if there's a group that you're circulating this to, then please count us in for that. The other question was around, I think you said that it was going to be support for implementation,
yeah,
which has historically been a problem for our councils. They like it, they just don't really know how to use it and haven't really got time to take out of their day jobs to get something done. So I just wondered, do you have any idea of what form that might take?
I'm not going to say what kind of form it is just yet, because I'm probably going to be committing the department. But obviously, what you just said there is the problem we're trying to resolve.
Okay, cool. Well, let's stay in touch.
Yeah, of course. Let's do that.
Okay. Anyone else? No? Okay. In which case, we will move on. Thank you very much for that, Sheldon. I think Sheldon will stay with us for the rest of the meeting anyway. Sheldon mentioned that the Cabinet Office Data Standards Authority endorsed the standard. I think it was 2022 that they did that. And one reason they did that was because they knew we had in place proper transparent mechanisms for supporting the standard and for version control and for updating it and taking account of everybody's contributions without any proprietary bias. That's because the Open Referral organization has been in place since 2014, I think, so a decade now, internationally, based in the US. And we were hoping to hear from Greg Bloom that runs that, who's currently at a conference in California, which is why we booked this late in the day UK time. I think Greg has had trouble joining us.
I'm here.
Oh, you're here, Greg. Oh, wonderful. Great to see you. Right. Then spot on time, Greg. Greg, I will control your slides for you. You've only got 2. Fire away.
Right on. Great to be here. Thank you for picking a time late in your day so that I could join from the West Coast. I'm at an event that has not yet opened its doors, so I'm like outside sheltered under the rain. I'm on the go. Bear with me. Great to see you, Will. Great to see you, Chris. I recently met up with Chris and Shauna Nicol in Scotland. I'm really excited about everything underway in the UK. I'll give you all a briefing on just like big picture of like what the Open Referral Initiative is and a quick walkthrough of the purpose and the scope of the specifications. And I will offer you some strategic framing of what I understand to be the nature of the challenge. So let me jump right in. So Open Referral is a community of practice. We have a forum that actually Mike helped us get set up and consolidated into. That's the discourse forum on the left. There's a GitHub organization where all of our core specifications are managed. And I manage our website, which posts stories from members of our community that are implementing the spec or doing interesting things with it, occasionally going back 10 years. So there's a lot of historical lore on our blog if you want to go digging through it. And we also have, so Open Referral Initiative as a whole is an unincorporated community of practice, but the core products of the initiative and the resources that we gain through grants or one way or another are held by a fiscal sponsor. So it's a 501c3 nonprofit organization called Aspiration. This might be on the next slide. Right, so Aspiration is a organization that offers capacity building and facilitation for social good technology projects. I am actually here in Oakland, California for their summit. I'm happy to answer any questions about Aspiration and how they work. They are also, by the way, the hosts of the Signal protocol, the Open Whisper Systems protocol. They are the fiscal sponsor of that and many other social, open source projects. And so they hold our IP, and I work with them and their board to oversee that administration so that Open Referral itself can remain agile and adaptive without needing our own cumbersome organizational infrastructure. They do quite fine making us whole. So the human service data specification, which I should have spelled out on the slide, the human service data specification is the core technical product. That is what we refer to when we talk about the standard. HSDS is a set of specifications that specifically describe organizations, the services that they provide, and the locations that the services are available at, and the information that someone might need to know in order to access that service or understand who is providing it. So Open Referral, as like HSDS, does not include within it any information about individual people or the processes of actually being referred. The idea is that the information should be openly available in a standard format, the information about services, so that different people and different organizations can use it to refer people in different ways. So we have a narrow scope that does not include information about the actual service delivery, which obviously is very important. I do help organizations and I work on similar related standards initiatives that do deal with information about people and referral processes, such as the FHIR standard from HL7. But our scope for HSDS is very narrow, and the purpose of the specification is for data exchange. It is an interchange format. So it's not trying to tell anybody how to build their database. People have reverse engineered databases, using our specification in ways that have saved them lots of time and heartache because they didn't have to develop a whole new data model from scratch, but it's not really designed for storing data. It's merely for moving data between systems. And the idea being that any given system that collects or uses this data can speak this language once, can be adapted so that it can publish in this format and or receive data in this format, which dramatically reduces the cost and the friction of integrating systems and sharing this data. Let's see, it is, for when I first started this initiative, especially in the United States, we don't have this benevolent understanding of standards culturally that you all do. I admire the UK that's like, yeah, standards, we should do standards. In the US, standards is a concept that carries some baggage in my generation of technologists. So we didn't call it standards until the industry association endorsed them. So Inform USA, which is formerly the Alliance of Information and Referral Systems, is an industry association that represents human service referral providers, most of which are call centers, most of which are nonprofit, but some are government and some are even for-profit. There's about over 1,000 call centers, referral providers that are members of Inform USA, formerly the Alliance of Information and Referral Systems, across the US, and also our sibling association, Inform Canada. So I am also on the team at Inform USA as of this year. They manage the standards for the style of directory information and the operations of a referral call center. They have a whole list of different kinds of standards, many of which are organizational and operational. And HSDS is their technical standard for data exchange, which replaced an older XML standard from the early 2000s. Hold on. Somebody is calling me in and I want to make sure I don't drop off of this. Still with me. Okay. So, and I'm happy to take questions about either of those organizations. Just to close out my walkthrough of HSDS, we now have a standing technical committee that is formally appointed to govern the specification. In the past, what we've done is form ad hoc work groups that looked more or less like our current standing committee, but they were only formed for the specific purpose of developing an upgrade cycle or whatnot when we got funding and a mandate to do it. So we have a standing technical committee now with 5 members that represent different parts of the industry, including Mike, who's honestly, I can't praise Mike's leadership enough. Really helpful, has made terrific contributions to the specifications over the years, and has really helped us think through what kind of governance design we need to go through in order to support the evolution of our network as it expands to new places and tackles new kinds of use cases. Happy to talk more about the Standing Technical Committee. We just approved the charter for that committee last month, which we're happy to share with you. One technical note that I think Catherine might be able to elaborate upon with more acumen than I is, as part of our collaboration with Open Referral UK over the last few years, we achieved what we've wanted to do for a long time, which is developing formal mechanisms for profiling the specification in ways that can tailor it to particular domains and or nationalities or localities. So HSDS offers a core set of required fields and a much larger set of optional fields, and a profile of HSDS can exclude certain fields that are not relevant for certain contexts, and also extend and enumerate other fields that are needed in specific contexts while preserving interoperability with the standard as a whole. So there is an Open Referral UK profile of HSDS, and there are other profiles emerging for different domains, sectors, and so on. We are excited to see the proliferation of adaptations of the specification while preserving interoperability among the technology ecosystem that's building up around the specification. And so I just want to close with one message to you all that I've learned the hard way over many years, which is I almost never talk about standards. The standard is the means to the ends that I bring to my work with communities, and it's really just one tactical tool in a broader process that needs to be designed in order to solve this problem. Because non-standard data is a problem, but it is a part of a broader problem, which is that the supply of this data is irregular, under-resourced, and unreliable. And the standard helps address an aspect of the unreliable data supply, a very technical aspect. But ultimately, what we have to do is figure out how to answer the question of how this information can be sustainably and reliably maintained in any given community at any given scale in a way that many organizations can use, even though nobody really has the incentive to produce it or pay for it. It is a collective action problem. And I'll just tell you upfront, many people come into this domain and they look at the problem and they're like, well, just build the best website, and organizations, send out automatic emails and organizations will just update their own information. You cannot rely on organizations to update their own information. They are not reliable sources of information about the services that they provide. I know that because I worked at a very large organization. It was a very well-respected organization. And we would get many messages from many directories asking, please update your information. And my boss is like, nobody does that. You don't have to do that. And again, she was simply reflecting the consensus in the field, which is that organizations don't really have strong incentives to update their information, which takes some time. It doesn't necessarily generate more funding for them. People, sort of know word of mouth, how to find their way to people. and that works fine for each individual organization, but obviously at an aggregate level, it causes all kinds of problems, as Sheldon described. But we can't wish that it was the other way. The standard enables us to engineer new institutional arrangements, right? It removes one of the reasons why organizations don't cooperate, but we have to figure out how that cooperation works. So just to recap, the standard is a very important and helpful tactic that has to be a part of a broader strategy of institutional design to answer the question of how this information can be sustainably maintained. And I'll close there, get off my soapbox. I'm happy to answer questions on the spot. And I also have materials, documentation that I'm happy to point you all to. Mike, I shared at least one link with you that'd be great to share in the chat. And I'm happy to elaborate briefly now. And if anybody wants to find time to chat with me afterwards, let's connect.
Thank you very much, Greg. That's really insightful. As soon as I can get my head around chat, I will post that link of yours. Greg does have to leave us to get let inside the building. I hope it's warmer out there than it is in the UK at the moment, Greg. So if we have questions for Greg, they should be now, please. So please do raise your hand or chip in if anyone has any questions for Greg.
And I'm taking a look at the chat. Let's see. Okay, cool.
Greg, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
I thought that was fantastic, and the passion with which you said you don't talk about data standards, you talk about how do we ensure information is going to be accurate and
That's
have
right.
value. Have you got any learning with regards to that, as to messages, as to what local organizations should therefore think about and adopt and implement?
Yeah, so I just shared in the chat a link to sort of like our big picture strategic framework of like what are the institutional paths towards successful, durable production arrangements, right? Supply side data production arrangements. So again, that's a very wonky phrase, and you're asking like, what language do I use to talk to people in organizations? I mean, basically, I sustain my work and sustain Open Referral's work by essentially consulting with organizations that could use our standards, but want help in figuring out like how to facilitate the process of figuring out what their strategy ought to be. So I come in, and usually what I do is I go to the organization. When I'm invited into a community, I find the organizations that are already maintaining directories, and I talk to them. And I ask them, how are you doing? What are you trying to achieve? What are your challenges? What do you wish was possible? And I iterate that with as many of the like primary organizations that people say at least try to produce this information. And then I bring them together to reflect what they're saying. So I figure out what their language is when what they're saying they want to achieve in terms of the management of this information. And usually it's a combination of like, we want the information to be reliable. We want it to be more useful. We don't have enough resources to maintain it. This other organization is maintaining this like overlapping set of information, and it feels competitive, and people are sort of, confused as to where to go. And, we wish there was some sort of way that we could all work together. But in the past, when those kinds of conversations have emerged, by default, they usually end up going to, let's try to build the one centralized system that everybody will be compelled to use. And that is where things die, right? The one centralized system, as far as I can tell, has I don't know of any successful implementations of it, right? The mythical monolith in the sky. And it's usually because different organizations might share the same goals, but they have different needs, right? They have different specific objectives. They might serve different kinds of audiences. They might serve people in different ways. And so they have legitimately different needs for how to use the information. And trying to force everybody to use one centralized system just doesn't work. And so what we talk about is the need for healthy information ecosystems in which there is sustainable infrastructure such that data can be maintained once by some means in some standardized format and aggregated among many systems and circulated among many systems. So if you want to be fancy, the big vision in the long term is federation. And in the sort of meantime, it's like, how can we collaborate to leverage the assets that already exist in our community and help them add up to more than the sum of their parts. And so if you take a look at that, that link to the blog post, that sort of shares our strategic analysis of why is this such a hard problem, and what are like archetypal patterns of sustainable institutional arrangements. And again, as you look through that document, if you look through the white paper, that we offer several archetypal patterns, which I'm happy to talk about. They're not either or. It just helps to understand them each on their own terms. And the standard, again, does not solve those problems. It just makes it possible for us to design those kinds of solutions.
Yeah. Great. Thanks very much, Greg.
Thank you, Simon.
Sure.
Thank you for that, Greg. Any other questions for Greg? No. In which case, Greg, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you also.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you for funding from the centre the technical work of Open Data Services and all the support that they've given us specifically in the UK that comes from the project. I would like to emphasise that it's one standing international committee. Everything is in the
That's
open.
right.
There are UK members and we are open to more UK participation.
That's right.
It's not, this is not a US thing, it's an international
That's
thing.
right.
And we've got an awful lot to learn from your brilliant experience in the States. Thank you very much.
Likewise, and yes, please do join our forum. There is a sub forum for UK specific conversation that you can join. And yes, also, Mike, thank you for reminding me. Open Data Services Cooperative has been with us from the beginning. Before they were Open Data Services Co-op, their founders were advising me. Some of their founders actually worked on resource directory projects like back in the 2000s. There's such a deep well of experience. They do great work with other data standards in the domain, like 360 Giving and IATI. I really admire their support for our project because I've been scrappy. We've scrimped and saved the money to pay them. We're a very small project, given their scheme of things. They have other massive institutional clients. And they really go a long way with relatively few resources that we bring them. And I really trust their stewardship, and I'm glad that they're continuing to be involved as we move forward into this, more international approach. So thank you, Open Data Services. Catherine, I'm gonna let you take it from here. Please let me know if any other questions come up, and I'm happy to follow up with y'all. Good luck.
Thanks, Greg. Have a good conference.
All right.
And that's a brilliant introduction to Catherine Irish of Open Data Services Co-op. Catherine is the technical expert and will particularly look at version 3 of the standard and the UK profile on that standard. So over to you, Catherine.
Thanks, Mike. And yeah, thank you to Greg for that brilliant introduction. Mike, would you mind stopping sharing your screen just so I could share mine?
Good point, Catherine. Yeah, there we go.
Well, thank you. And hopefully, has that worked?
Yeah.
Bro. So yeah, hi everyone, I'm Catherine. I am a data analyst for Open Data Services Cooperative, who Greg has just introduced. We are a consulting organization that works primarily with various different data standards, and we are the current technical partners for Open Referral. And yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about version 3 of Open Referral and Open Referral UK. So HSDS, as Greg outlined, is the Human Data Services Specification, and it is the data standard that Open Referral International develops. And in May 2023, we released Open Referral 3.0, and that included various upgrades to HSDS 2.0. Primarily, we converted from using a tabular format to JSON. So previously, the data standard was in a tabular format, which is, you can imagine, somewhat similar to a collection of spreadsheets, a bit more complicated than that, but that was the kind of broad structure of it. And we've converted to JSON, which is obviously a much more flexible format and much easier to parse and use in various different ways. And we still also have a tabular format for those that need it. So if I go to quickly just show you on the schema reference, if you do want to use a tabular format, you can head over to under here. I thought I could quickly find this link live, and now I'm panicking a bit. Oh wait, here it is. So yeah, so we've got publication formats reference. So JSON format is the primary format, but we also have advice here for using a tabular package, which you can serialize it into. I forgot my slides. And yeah, converting to a JSON format has also allowed us to integrate the human service data API suite. So previously there was a separate data standard which defined the API format for this standard, whereas now we've been able to integrate that all into one package in HSDS 3.0, making HSDS an API first standard. And within the upgrade as well, we also made some data model improvements. So things like consolidating. Previously, there was one format for one kind of object for postal address and one for physical address. So we've combined that into just one address tables. Similar for attributes, that's all been combined into one attributes table. And I'll quickly just show you, this is the International Open Referral reference page. So you can see here the kind of core schema. If we go to version 3.1. So we recently released actually version 3.1, which included a few further upgrades. But yeah, you can see here we've got the 4 kind of core objects: organization, service, location, and service at location, which make up HSDS. And we've also got guidance on all of the other objects that can go into that schema as well. So yeah, there's a lot of information within this documentation, and obviously if you've got any questions about that, please let me know. And then in terms of Open Referral UK 3.0, so Open Referral UK, as Greg described, is a profile of Open Referral or HSDS, which essentially you could think of as similar to a branch on using Git, where Open Referral UK have brought their standard in line with Open Referral 3.0, branched off of that and made some additional changes. So to understand the changes that have gone into Open Referral UK 3.0, you can look in the HSDS changelog for version 3.1. So this highlights all of the various changes that went into developing HSDS 3.0, which have also been brought in to Open Referral UK. And as well as bringing those changes forward, there's been some additional changes to standardize with the UK standards, and any changes in addition that have been made to OR UK are in the Open Referral UK changelog. So you can see here, this is mainly just fairly minor superficial changes, like name changes for standardization and so on. And finally, I just wanted to talk to you about the OR UK API specification. So the original HSDS API specification was very broad, and the Open Referral UK organization actually made their own API, which was a lot more focused, and that has been adopted by the international standard. So it includes a fairly small set of GET methods, which you can see in the API documentation here. But of course, developers may add more and can include post methods. So you can see the kind of various endpoints in the Open Referral UK API documentation here, and the key ones that have been added to our UK 3.0. So there's a new get service at locations ID, which was requested by UK developers and US developers. And there's also a stub method, which just returns some basic information about the feed as well. So that's everything from me. If anyone has any questions, please do shout.
Anything for Catherine? If not, Catherine does keep an eye on the forum, and that is a good place to ask Catherine questions. And if there aren't, we can move on to, hopefully you can see my screen again, to Dave Isles and Guy Hilton from TPXimpact, the project that's working on behalf of MHCLG. Catherine mentioned that it's an API first standard. When we talk about compliance in the UK, we're primarily talking about compliance with those core web methods that Catherine described, including the root one, which says what version of the standard you're working with. And Dave and Guy have been working on upgrades to tools and associated documentation that explains and helps us validate and show who has valid feeds. So I will stop sharing now, and Dave, hand over to you to take over the screen. Thank you.
Thank you. And you'll see this okay.
Yes.
Yes, grand. Yeah. As Mike just introduced me, Guy, working on creating this. I'm working on more behind the scenes stuff and getting the validator up and running. And I think Guy's going to kick us off talking about what we're looking at now. Unless Guy can't get his mic working, in which case I will start with. Oh, here we go. Never mind.
Hello, sorry about that. Hi, yeah, I'm Guy from TPXimpact. I've been working on open data, open standards in the public sector and for government data for, I guess, 15 years. And just before I start, I really just want to tip my hat to Mike and to Sheldon, and also to Ben Unsworth. This project, it really is for real. I've never seen an open data standard done this well. We're really, really in earnest about making this work. And we're very much hoping that the development work we're going to show you in the next 5 minutes is, again, very, very practical and very much focused on really making this happen and really making this real. Okay, so what have we been doing? If you're at all familiar with the existing site, you will be aware that there are 2 tools on there, the dashboard and the validator. If you're not familiar with those, we'll be talking through them in the next 5 minutes. Those are relevant to version 1 of the standard. And again, full credit to the guys at Purism for developing those in the first place. Our brief at TPX was to come in and to update these tools and revise them for version 3. We are very, very keen that people do migrate to version 3 of the standard, because there are so many technical advantages to that, which we'll be going over as well. And our goal in doing this, in revising these tools, is absolutely to be user-centered in the most profound way. We really, really are not interested in making a HUD ornament here. We're interested in making really solid tools that genuinely solve problems for you. So for that reason, we are very much putting our money where our mouth is. What you're going to see this afternoon is absolutely the first moment we've possibly been able to show these. They are, at present, only just barely a minimum viable product. We are giving you the earliest possible access. We're showing you this as soon as we possibly could, and we'd really like you to join us as we improve these, and as we iterate on these, and as we try really hard between now and March to make these into tools which genuinely solve your problems. So we are, this afternoon, hoping very much to enlist you and involve you in a user-driven design process, working in the open. All our code is on GitHub. We'll be sharing links to that. You're welcome to make issues on GitHub. We invite you to come and try the tools. Again, we'll be sharing how to do that post-meeting. In the first instance, because we're aware that you're trying to build live services and we're also trying to build a service, what we don't want to do by any means is to expose you to any kind of risk. That, our tool is an MVP at the moment. So you will potentially encounter bits that are unpolished, bits that may not even work, I wish to say. So in the very first instance, we would like myself or Dave to just sit in with you and be your co-pilot while you first encounter the tools, so we can explain stuff, and also so you can have an opportunity to feed back to us, and so we can we can share your experience of your initial reaction and what have you. Subsequently, after that, we'll let you have all the access you need to play with and to test your own feeds and to explore. And we are really hoping to make suggestions and to be involved and to help us develop in the most open, transparent, community-focused way of making tools that genuinely solve a problem. So that said, let's have a look at these tools. The first one is currently called the dashboard. What this is essentially is a database of services implementing the OR standard. You'll notice an obvious problem with this. At the moment, there aren't any 3.0 services. So at the moment, as we're showing you the dashboard views this afternoon, you'll notice it's full of essentially placeholder data. We would like this to be your data coming up. We would like this to be a listing of your feeds. And what we really want to do, the purpose of this tool really is to build, it's taken very much the thread of what Greg was saying actually, about the importance of organization and about community. And we're really trying to build a community of implementers. So there are two views onto this database. One view is the view you're seeing here, which is about availability, the health check. So once registered and enrolled in this, we will check your service every 24 hours for availability and for compliance and essentially for health and sanity. So that will hopefully provide a level of quality assurance on an ongoing basis. And there's also another view which will allow service consumers and users to essentially shop around and search and find services which they might want to syndicate and to use. At the moment, as I say, a tool is only as good as its data. There isn't any data. Until you join us, there will be no content for this table. Please join us. As you start to bring your feeds online, we would like to put them on this table. Again, we'll when we get your when you have a session with myself or with Dave, or if you want to talk to Mike or Sheldon afterwards, we will walk you through the process of how to get your data in here and how to maintain it. But essentially, once you have a valid feed, we would love you to join this database, and there will be a ton of benefits associated with that. As Sheldon has hinted, we can't talk about this quite just yet, but there will be hopefully some good reasons why you might want to get involved. So this afternoon, the bigger demo is around the validator. So this is the compliance checker. For those who aren't familiar, we'll just show you initially the existing tool. And the goal here, the idea here is you input a feed URL and you can hit the validate button, and it goes away and has a look. It makes a ton of API requests against your feed. And as you'll see, it will hopefully eventually.
This one might take a bit too long.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, this actually underscores one thing, that because what this is doing is at the moment is extremely detailed, and essentially we inspect each of your endpoints and validate and quality assure them. There we go. It does take a little while on the existing tool, and while this is fair enough, you can go off and make a cup of coffee while you're doing it. One of the things we want to do in terms of making these tools more usable and more developer focused and more productivity focused is to give you an instant or near instant tool that if you're sat there in the banging your head against a feed that's broken, we want you to be able to go check it. Doesn't work. Fix it. Check it. Fix it. Check it. Fix it. Check it. So we have tried absolutely to make this developer practical. So Dave, if we flip back to the new version, and we try the same thing. Yep. Hopefully we'll see a result a little faster. Or in the law of demos, maybe we won't.
Oh,
there we
yeah.
go. There we go. Yeah,
I'll
actually,
blame that on the dev server. The dev server needs warming up at the minute.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Okay. So what you'll see, first of all, is that we've made some hopefully quite major performance improvements that make this much easier to iterate practically as a developer tool. And we've also hopefully tried to improve some of the clarity. Again, I would emphasize this is work in progress. We really want these messages to become a little bit more helpful, especially if we show you one of the failing ones, the kind of support feedback you get from a failing one. Another thing that actually Dave's just brought to my attention there is these results are now bookmarkable as well. So you can make a bookmark that is your feed, and every time you access that bookmark, it will pull your feed down and check it fresh for you. Again, just to make things easy, you can just put a link on your toolbar and it's easy. That pretty much sums up what I wanted to show you in terms of the front end. Dave will explain a little bit more about what we've done and how we've managed to get this speed up. But like I say, the message I really want to leave you with is that this is a start point that we're showing you, and we are absolutely inviting you to join us from today, going forward, developing this together, co-creating this, and really turning this into something which is a robust and useful, practical, ergonomic tool that really solves practical problems for you. So, okay, Dave, over to you.
thank you very much, Guy. Yes, so I'm going to go into just a little bit more detail about the differences between the V1 and V3 validator, and kind of a lot of my focus for the moment is going to be on the validator and what we're doing there. One of the things Greg said earlier, which I jotted down actually, which is a key point that we're kind of working on, is that what we really want out of this standard is that systems should only need to learn to speak one language, and then they should be able to access any of these compliant services and APIs that are out there, and they can work with them and understand them without any problems. So with that, one of the main differences currently between the V1 validator, which I have here, and the V3, is that some things that would only be raised as issues here, so unique fields with duplicate content, invalid formats, and invalid values, they would instead be raised as errors. So what I'm showing you here is the same Bucks API service and how it's returned on the V1 original validator and our new updated validator. It looks like it has a lot of issues at the moment. We are going to be improving the way these are returned, but it's not as bad as it looks. Essentially, organization is spelled with an S instead of a Z, so our validator is having lots of problems with it, and then the IDs that are being returned are integers rather than UUID strings, and you can kind of see that it's kind of highlighted here and here. And yeah, the key point is we've become a lot stricter on these not huge schema issues, but schema issues which can break that idea of only having to learn one language and being able to go off and speak to all of these APIs. If we let some of these slide, they could cause problems, and then your API is no longer actually able to be picked up and used by anybody who's built to the standard. So with that, in the V3 version, you can see here, this is just one I made earlier. We've got a bit of a mock API returning responses on the V3 profile, and this is the kind of thing that will be called out if you run into any issues, kind of, you know, this property is required and not there, the value is not in the format it's meant to be. Some issues here with the pagination, you can see, you know, it says it's got one, but there's actually 4 items, or there's only one when we've asked for 4. You're lying about what the first page is. And I guess the other thing to highlight as a difference between the V1 and V3 service is that we're really focusing on these basic checks, as we're calling them here, or the core endpoints. So in order for us to consider you as a pass, these 3 core endpoints need to work correctly. So the stub base endpoint that's going to return some meta information about the API, the service list that will return all the services, and the service by ID. So these are the core endpoints that we really want to see work, because without that, nobody's going to be able to get any useful information out of them. So if these work and all pass the validation, you will get a pass. And then any issues with the other endpoints listed in the API specification will be raised as warnings rather than as errors that would fail the whole service. Guy talked about kind of performance improvements in order to speed this process up and to try and get the results faster. Part of the way we've done that is by doing a little bit less. So the original validator is doing a lot of work in the background to search through all the results, or a lot of the results that are returned, and find kind of the perfect services to test parameter searches and to really check that everything's working. So if you search for a specific location, you know, it's checking, oh, well, I'm expecting to see these services and things like that. We've kind of dropped a little bit of that in order to make sure that what we're focusing on is getting the faster response and really checking that the APIs work as accepted and that the schema validation is returned fast. Because you can see here, this is the API that I set off on validation earlier when Guy was talking, and it's still there and still waiting. So those more extensive checks we've left out for this for the time being, and probably going forward, because we don't think that the time it takes here and what we gain from it is worth the delays. And so, yeah, those are the real differences between the V1 and V3 validator as they are. The other one, which some eagle-eye viewers might have noticed, is that it is working with both V1 and V3 services. So this is a V1 service that I put in, and it checks it against the HESDS UK version 1 standard, and it all looks good. We are also going to be checking against the V3 standard. Obviously, that's our main target for this. But the idea with our new validator is that it should be easily extensible and be forward compatible. So version 3.1 is already there. All we should need to do is load in the new schema. There's a new test profile that needs creating, but again, that's a small piece of work. And then what we're also aiming for users is just, all you need to do is throw in your URL, and the validator will figure out what version you're using and what it should be checking against, and then give you your report back. Hopefully this, I say, some minimal work's necessary to keep this up and running with newer versions going forward. There is some support, hopefully, I think, coming for the next couple of years to keep this up and running. So that should be all right going forwards. And that's us, really. As Guy mentioned earlier, we are very keen to get these services as they're coming in and as you're creating them, and so we can kind of work together to test each other's work and check up on each other. This is still a work in progress tool, so pretty confident in it now, as we're describing it as like an MVP, I guess, at this point. It's the earliest point where it's really a useful tool. But we want to start using it with real version 3 services and test that out and see if the kind of the feedback it's providing is useful for those trying to implement the latest version. That's it from me.
That's great, Dave. It's probably worth mentioning that that stub, that root endpoint gives the version, and its
Yes.
absence is treated as we're dealing with a version 1 feed. Yeah.
Yes, that endpoint wasn't described in the V1 schema. So if we try and go here and we get a 404, or it doesn't return anything useful, then we know we're dealing with version 1 there. And then yeah, going forward, the V3 feed has the version in there, and as long as they keep using that, it should be easy to pick up and know what version we're working with for the validator.
Great. Do we have questions for Dave and Guy? Okay, now is not the only opportunity. We have on the call suppliers, developers, and people who might commission feeds. If you are a supplier or a developer that wants to stay ahead of the game in your own local authority, I would say, I would urge you to look at this. And as Dave said, let's help one another, both in refining the tools. So if you're getting an error and it's not properly described, Dave may be able to do something to help improve the description of that. And if you want to make sure you've got a good compliant feed, then this is a good way of testing it and getting it out there early. As Sheldon has said, increasingly MHCLG is encouraging take-up of the standard, and I'm expecting demand to grow in the new year and if you want to be first out the blocks as a supplier to say we have a compliant feed, then in coming weeks and months, you would have an opportunity to test your feed with those tools and also help us improve it to help you. So I will be sharing a feedback form shortly and by email, whereby you can say, yes, we would like to participate in that sharing and testing with Dave and Guy.
Mike, can I ask a quick question then? So we've got an HSDS3 feed. So can we do this? When you say weeks and months, can we do it? Can we do it? In the next week, therefore, bring forward ours and run through that with you.
I think the answer is yes, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah, pretty much. I think the feedback form that Mike's got at the end is essentially a way of you submitting your details and saying, we want to be involved in it. And then we're going to reach back out to you and be essentially to say, hello, let's get on a call, or here are the details, give it a try, and give us your feedback. And hopefully the feedback it provides you is useful, kind of thing.
Okay. And I guess my second question was, you talked about how it's sort of aligned to what Greg said. Is there something checking the sort of the recency and the accuracy of the data in this as well? Or is it just, it doesn't matter if the data is 2 years old, if it's to the standard, it's still green?
Yes. For us, for what this tool is doing, it's checking it's to the standard. So we don't have a way of checking, that the data is accurate, really, here. What we're checking is that you are returning it in a way that somebody else's API could pick it up. It's really making sure that when you say you're fixed to the standard, somebody else can pick up your API and get all the data it needs from it. And so I'm just checking.
And so checking, Dave, therefore, this is a tool to help developers check that their product is correct. It is not a tool for councils to use to check whether the products they're thinking of using are surfacing accurate and recent data.
Yeah, so it's to make sure that what you're serving is correct and others will be able to use it. Hopefully what it should also do is provide a bit of a directory of services that are available to use and places you can get data from. If you've built something that can read these read APIs that comply to the standard, then it'll give you a list of compliant APIs to go and get information from. But you're right, yeah, no ability to check that the data is accurate.
It does give councils, though, the ability to verify that they're actually, whatever developer they're getting themselves is actually following the standards. So that is a something that councils can use.
It's a good start. I think it's great, and we'd be keen to have a go. And I think as part of it, we'd be keen to have a thought about how do you make sure the message is reminded back to people that this proves that it is to the standard, it doesn't prove that the information that's in there is actually accurate and up to date and recent.
And Simon, there's always a question about where publicly funded projects stop and room for the innovators comes in, and you or fellow suppliers might want to look at tools which say, well, I've got a feed now, show me what proportion of those records were updated in the last 2 months or week or whatever, and introduce quality checks on that data, or indeed richness checks on that data, which is something that the prior tool did and we've currently dropped in this version, albeit, you know, in future years we could extend them or leave it to the market to extend them, knowing if you're developing a tool, it'll work with everybody's feed, not just one.
I mean, there's lots of things we can do, isn't there? Because you could include whether people had searched the data and fed back that it was accurate or inaccurate, as an example of creating that more visibly. And I also think we want ADAS and DCS to make sure that they're having input into that consideration. Anyway, I think it's a great start. It's just about how we make it become useful to achieving outcome, rather than just saying, yes, I'm compliant, now what shall I do next?
Yeah. And there's some text in the guidance documentation on that, and do take a look. The link to the feedback form, which I have put in chat and I will share again, gives you the opportunity to comment on the documentation. I should say a couple of more things on the feed. Firstly, Dave and Guy said we are testing a few of the basic API endpoints that Catherine has described. There are others which some suppliers may choose to follow, and I know some also support put and post methods. They are not validated, but they may be seen as value-added features within individual suppliers' tools. And if you're buying from a supplier, you might want to consider those points. But certainly if you're buying from a supplier, and we strongly recommend you request that a feed is OR UK compliant, and that compliance simply means a binary pass or fail test against the validator. No weasel words around that, no influence by the standard, but we've done something differently in the way that Internet Explorer used to do when the rest of the world followed the W3C standard for HTML. Anyway, that's my little gripe there. Any more questions now for anyone who's been on the call? There are things coming in through chat.
In the chat. Would you like to come in, Shanice?
Thank you so much for that. It was really, really informative and very good to hear, and looking forward to using it and seeing more people use it as well. So the two questions were from me. I would like to understand how the challenge of local authorities' current digital maturity is being considered, firstly, and then also, do you provide support for gathering the data and managing it or cleaning it before the standard can be implemented, or what support is available for the developers to actually move forward?
I don't know if others want to chip in here, Shanice. We expect that a lot of the data is already being gathered by various directories within councils, typically the local offer for send, family information services directory, child services, leisure services. And what we're saying is we're expecting that to continue, but continue with a single feed. And I know Greenwich, for instance, is merging 3 directories databases into one and using the same feed to feed overlapping subsets of that data into different places. So we see this as a technical standard along with guidance on the quality methodology to use to gain good data, but not specifically services, other than a community of practitioners who can share their understanding. In terms of data maturity, I know that CDDO and the local government association both have tools whereby you can test the data maturity of your own council. And that does look at things like the extent to which you're sharing data and using APIs. Also, the other events we've had from this program, the first one run by MHCLG looked at the problem of immature ways of gathering and sharing data. For instance, these black box solutions that combine both gathering data and feeding it out as a directory without the ability to split one from the other. And future MHCLG events and documentation and blogs will touch on that more. Does that help?
Do you want me to say something, Mike?
Go for it, Ian.
Sorry, so I'm just going to upset all the technical people now, Shanice. So obviously this is a technical meeting, but I think it's fair to say that we will probably describe the technical bit as the easy bit. The dealing with the process and the people is a difficult bit. But to be fair to this meeting, we focused on the technical elements. And as Mike's just said now, there is in the new year some more support on how we're actually going to adopt this. And we see that the exec summary to reach senior management to focus on, as Greg said at the beginning, what the benefits are for this rather than just the technology. And then there is a project initiation document, a PID, which will really set out all the issues that you're going to come across in collecting the data, in assuring that data, and in reusing that data. So we are working on that side of it, and we know that bit is quite difficult. It's very difficult for us to be prescriptive on that, but there is some support in there, and it's an event in late January that's probably going to be the one that's focused on that. So I have put an answer in the chat. We are doing something about it, but obviously this particular meeting is focused on the technical side, which is very difficult. But when you look at the big picture, possibly the easy bit.
Thanks, Ian. And Ian has helped various councils implement the standard, so he knows better than most of us what he's talking about there. Chris Mackey, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if there was, because I think our feed is failing, but it's maybe not far away from passing. So is there somebody I can speak to about how, what needs to happen to get to a pass point? We have developers in place, so it's just a question of me articulating what needs to be done to them, essentially.
Yeah, I think speak with Dave initially, and Dave will get in touch with you. And if there are issues over the feed, which if there are other issues, will involve Catherine. But between the two of them, we'll get that sorted. I know, Chris, you're in the early adopter unfortunate position in that you implemented Open Referral before Open Referral UK existed. So you were very close to the international standard, and then we upgraded to version 3 and introduced the UK profile, and we're very grateful that you're implementing that. And yeah, very keen to see that supports version 3, particularly as you're covering a wide range of services throughout Scotland. And we're hoping that more Scottish local authorities will adopt the standard, so you can share 2 ways with them.
Well, I see this as being stage 1, if you like, and then I can advocate for wider adoption north of the border. But I can't advocate for it if we're not compliant ourselves. So.
Yeah, let's make sure you're high on the list for Dave to communicate with and get it working. Thank you for that. Anyone else? Okay, if not, let me say forum is the best place. We try and work in the open. So if you've got a non-confidential question that you want to share, or you want to share your experience, or you want to look at other people's experience, go to the forum. It's an international forum. Lots of the issues are shared transnationally. There are UK threads if it's specific to the UK. You can also email hello@openreferral.org. Should be openreferraluk.org. Sorry about that. I will fix that. That's as I say, use the forum if you have the choice. But if there are things that are very specific only to you, we can put them through email there. And finally, there's the feedback form, and I've put in the chat, and I will again a link to that, and we will email that to you along with this recording and a link to the slides. And just a few words on what's coming next. We have that meeting of early adopters. This is a non-technical meeting in the name of MHCLG Local Digital that will happen on the 28th of January. So if in your council or your client councils you have service managers, heads of IT, senior directors that need convincing about the standard and its benefits, they are the people to attend that meeting. Also look out for MHCLG announcements, things they can't say at the moment, but which will become a lot clearer in the next few months. Keep an eye on the project website and for formal release of the validator and dashboard, but please be involved in those earlier if you can. And if we have no more questions, we'll all end a bit early and enjoy your Wednesday evenings. Thank you very much.